Before we get started, I have a quick favor. I've been self-funding the Finding Genius podcast for 5 years now. I've done over 3,000 episodes. And as you can see on YouTube, we're up over 1 million views on the channel, which is fantastic. The next thing I really want to push on is to get up to 10,000 subscribers. Because once we do, we'll be able to put a donate button and we'll be able to solicit donations to help keep the podcast running and to also get the Finding Genius Foundation moving along. We have a big project studying anxiety, depression, and PTSD and working on a product to help people overcome these problems because I've seen them explode recently after the last 2 years of the whole virus situation. So if you would, please subscribe to the podcast. That would help us tremendously. Give us a thumbs up and check in the description for Buy Me a Coffee. It's about $5. If you could buy me a coffee, I'd really appreciate it. It would help keep the channel going, and I love coffee. Thank you.
Forget frequently asked questions,
common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
go above and beyond.
They become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
with Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius Podcast. My guest today is Britnie Turner. She's the CEO of Ariel, host of Broke to Awoke podcast. She's been involved in rescuing over 8,000 people from sex trafficking. She's obviously very anti-sex trafficking, and for that many people, I would guess that's only like a drop in the bucket. She also helps people that have suffered disasters. So we'll find out the two. So welcome, Britnie. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Richard. I'm excited to be on your show.
Yeah, let's start with the anti-sex trafficking. I know it just seems like such a distasteful, horrible thing that maybe people would learn about once and feel bad, then never think about again. Why did it continue to affect you? Like, how did you first learn about it, and then why did it affect you your whole life?
Well, I appreciate you even being willing to have the conversation because you're spot on. A lot of people hear about it and they choose to plug their ears and they say it's too hard for me to hear about. And I agree that it's one of the most horrific things that is taking place on this planet, one of the worst evils I've ever even heard of. But if the good people are plugging their ears and saying it's too hard for me to even hear about, then how in the world are we going to create a real plan to do something about it and end this great evil? Because there are currently more people enslaved today than there ever have been in the history of mankind. That's not something I'm going to be doing nothing about. So at 12 years old, my grandma came down to the middle of nowhere, South Carolina, where I was being raised on a farm with my 5 other siblings, super sheltered, and she puts on this movie about sex trafficking. And the opening scene is this little girl who's in the back of a taxi, and she gets taken to this super creepy hotel, and she gets put in there, and there's this like nasty dude waiting to rape her. And the guy exchanges money with the cab driver, and then you just see the fear in her eyes and the door slam, and she just starts screaming. That's the opening scene. And the end of the movie, I don't even know the name of this movie. It was so long ago, but the end of the movie, she is in a container ship with 50 other girls, and they're being shipped overseas to be sold and continue to be trafficked. It was just a horrible, sad scene. And then at the very end of the movie, they all die. And I walked away from that movie, obviously heartbroken, but also awakened to just how terrible this atrocity was. I had no idea that this was happening prior to watching this movie. And I remember thinking that I could have been that little girl. And if I was, then I would pray every single day that somebody would take the time to care to come find and rescue me. I raised my hand that day and said, God, I want that to be me. And I didn't even know where to start or how to go about it. It's been quite a journey trying to figure out how to make that happen. But I started going on mission trips at 13 years old so I could learn more and find where this is happening. And just was very, very dedicated to this cause. It's been like the reason it's been my purpose since that day. And God led me into business, like almost kicking and screaming. I did not want to go into business. I was like, what the heck does this have to do with that? And I thought, okay, well, maybe it's just because I need resources. At the time, it was $150 billion a year industry. And I literally yesterday just found out that it's gone from $150 billion a year to $236 billion a year. That was actually news to me that it's jumped that high. And Richard, we have found children as cheap as $7 for 24 hours. Like,
That's horrible.
not like people are paying millions and that's where this revenue is coming from. It's just really growing. It's actually the fastest criminal enterprise in the whole world because people have found it's the drug you can essentially keep reselling. And so I go into business. I started my company actually living in my car and working for free for some house flippers. And my goal was to learn real estate investing so I could have assets and I could fund these missions myself. And that grew into me becoming very quickly the Forbes 6th fastest growing woman-owned company in the world. I started this in my car during the greatest economic recession in real estate history in America. And so it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy being a 20-year-old female in construction. It wasn't easy during that economic time when nobody wanted to buy houses. Nobody wanted to lend on houses. I have no college education, but I was fueled by this purpose because every time I wanted to quit, I saw that little girl's eyes and I just said, this isn't about you. And that's why everything I've ever owned is called Ariel something. And that's really for me to have that higher perspective, to remember that why, and to lean into God's divine plan, even when I don't understand, and to trust I'm here for a reason. And so it's not for any other reason except for to remind me constantly of what we're trying to do. So I got into real estate investing. I got really freaking good at it because, again, every day I'm thinking about these kids. I said, all right, God, how do I go from doing this to, I thought I was going to live in Africa. And he said, buy an island. I was like, what the freak does buying an island have to do with anything? But what I've seen is
Islands, of certain surnames have a lot of attention to them. So, yeah.
right. I didn't know how those two went together because I've never seen people do good things on it.
That's true.
But what I'd been doing, I continued to go on different missions all around the world this whole time. And what I saw was incredible need, not just sex trafficking happening, but I saw kids dying of hunger. I saw kids dying of lack of clean water and some basic things that we have solved as humanity, but people were still dying when they didn't have to. And then I would come back to the United States where I live and I see people with more access to abundance than almost anywhere else in the world, throwing their own lives away. And they just didn't really see that they were capable of changing the world. And they had these tools and resources that could save somebody's life if they just tried at all. And so the vision God gave me for this island was to create a healing space that essentially woke up the force for good, where people would heal themselves enough to be able to rise above their own problems so they could care to help other people and end their suffering. And what's beautiful about that is, again, I'm coming back to the US and all these people they're drinking or like hard, they're drifting, they're ruining their relationships, they are just living to escape, they're depressed, all this stuff when they seem to have it all. And I think that people really struggle with those things. Obviously, there's a million reasons, but the big root one is not walking in your purpose. And when you can walk in that purpose, then you'll be so fulfilled that you're not looking for other things to fill your cup that, again, can only be found from within. And you're not looking to escape your life because you like your life. And so
it's interesting that you had to find out, or how did you find out that you needed to wake people up first and free them enough that they could help other people?
The needs are so overwhelming. Like I realized I couldn't do it all myself. So how do I wake people up to seeing how can I play matchmaker essentially from need to resource and purpose to fulfillment is the people with the resources need to start stepping into their calling, which ends human suffering all over the planet and solves all these global problems if people just stop throwing themselves away. And that's what would happen on this island. Like that was the whole point. And so it was, that was the concept. And I was called crazy for it. And I thought it would be some island off of Haiti or something like that. But God led me to this place in the British Virgin Islands. And so I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel qualified, even though I was really successful. I planned on like living in a mud hut my whole life. And so it was a weird idea to me. But flash forward, I start trying to bring this island to life, and it gets annihilated by the two strongest hurricanes history of the Atlantic. And I went down to just find and help my friends because I'd made so many friends in that region, and it really looked like everybody was dead. Like I'd never seen devastation like that before. And what I saw when I got down there, I was actually one of the first people in the territory after that. And I'm a very pushy person, which I'm fine with. Got in. I found that all these organizations that were taking donations to say they were going to help weren't actually freaking helping anybody. And they were just assessing and leaving. And I was like, wait a minute. People are starving. People don't have roofs over their head. People lost everything. What are you doing just sitting around talking? And so my first thought was actually, we need a team of rednecks down here. They would clean this place up so fast. They would get everything they need to everybody because I just grew up in South Carolina. And so that was really where the nonprofit was born, was out of the pain of that experience and really seeing how do you help a nation get back on its feet? Because believe it or not, predators jump in the chaos of disasters. They really prey on vulnerable people that just lost everything. I mean,
Yeah, I learned about that, yeah.
in Haiti, right after that really big earthquake in 2010, people would just spray paint the word orphanage on a sign and put it on a building, and people would just bring these children there, and they got sold to organ harvesters. Obviously, they were trafficked. They were free. I was so messed up. And so things end up becoming a double disaster. So I create the nonprofit then, flash forward, help the British Virgin Islands recover to the best of my ability, but kept thinking like, my goodness, these really horrible things take place after disasters. But also the government is like willing to work with you. So it's a wonderful way to help them with even bigger issues. If you come in at a disaster, you can like forge those relationships, see who's corrupt, see who's not. It's a quick indicator of people's hearts.
Or when you come in, have you now been in situations where people have poisoned the ability for let's say, a particular government to hear you? Have you ever gone somewhere and they're like, no, we know you Westerners, you come here to just make it worse, not to help get out of here type thing?
Nope. Never had that happen.
Oh, good.
Never had that happen. Nobody makes it worse. When you...
Well, no. I just wonder if even they have become cynical, but thank God to have. So.
I mean, some countries, most of the time they're really overwhelmed and they just don't know how to process all the aid that's even trying to come in. And so they can accidentally turn people away. But in general, when they have a massive disaster like that, they need all the help they can get. And so we always come in extremely humble and try to bolster their efforts, knowing that people trying to lead just went through a traumatizing experience as well. And most of the time, they're not even trained on how to deal with this stuff. So there was a guy in the Bahamas that was in charge of like this massive response, but he lost 5 family members. Like, try leading with that. So we have a big grace for them instead of ever tearing them apart. Like, how do we help them when they just got knocked down too? So flash forward, I end up meeting this guy named Jeremy Law, and we ended up going on a couple dates. He was very fun. He's a Green Beret, and he kept asking me on more dates, and I kept saying no. He finally figured out the way to get to my heart is through Indian food, and he brought Indian food to my office, and he's like, hey, what are you doing? And I had been planning a mission to go down and help after the Hurricane Dorian that hit the Bahamas and really, really annihilated that place. It's still the worst hurricane I've ever seen now. And he said, you can do that. And I said, yeah. He was active duty Green Beret at the time. And he ended up being able to get off of work and come down there and help me. I was like, yeah, sure, free security. We'd only been dating for a little bit at the time. And I watched this guy, again, we were with a different group, but I watched him end up day 2 or 3, take over the whole mission and just crushed it. Got people aid, created like exactly what the strategy needed to be, understood the assessment, deployed the teams, like really just was able to get to work in a whole new way than I'd ever seen anybody able to manage those disaster scenes. And I was like, well, first of all, I'm checking him out way harder now. It's sexy to me when people care about other people. Like, wow, his heart was just so beautiful. And I watched him find his purpose on that trip. So we went from just dating to being very serious. And I said, is this something that military guys are trained in? And he said, not specifically, but we are very familiar with these austere environments. I said, well, do you think your friends would want to do this? And he's like, oh yeah. So we ended up we totally changed the nonprofit that I started into being really veteran powered by plugging these men and women into these spaces. And the cool thing was, especially if they were retired, this ended up giving them like a whole new purpose and mission in life. And so some of his friends that were struggling with like suicidal ideation were now realizing that the world still needs them. And so
that's great.
it was so cool, but there's, layers of trauma that these veterans and first responders have been through, everything from like childhood stuff to war trauma to, having to walk in on scenes that no human should ever have to see. And so we realized after continuing to bring them onto these disaster scenes and anti-trafficking scenes that they needed to heal themselves in order to really have the resiliency required to go into some of these really dark places and bring light. And so we created a program called Heal the Heroes. And I'm so proud of it because a lot of the people that have come through the program were struggling to believe that the world was not better off without them in it. And they have since found their purpose, and we train them to start by being a hero in their own home first, and then a hero in their community, and then a hero in the world. And so with that force of first responders and veterans that we call heroes, we have rescued over 8,400 people from sex trafficking and deadly disasters across the whole world. And so it's proven to be an incredibly effective model. And the healing program starts on the island. So it's kind of a crazy story to say the least, but God is always guiding you, and he puts these seeds in your heart for a reason. And I spent a lot of my life just kind of upset, wondering like, when do I get to rescue kids? I didn't realize that I was being qualified to help lead this organization with a perspective that is needed in the nonprofit space, because I come from the for-profit space. And how do you really run things well? How do you solve problems versus just treat them topically? And how do you repurpose the most qualified people in the world that are taking their own lives to go save lives and stop evil? And so that's what we do.
Okay. Have you prayed to God and said, why do you allow such, horrible and heinous things to happen? Or have you had, that conversation with people? Maybe people have a hang up about that, or have you ever had a hang up about that?
I have a hang up about that. Absolutely. I'm not God, so I don't understand it.
Okay. Maybe you can say more.
Yeah. I've had it out with God many times, many, many, many times. And there's so much that I don't understand. The only thing I do know is that none of us are going to live forever. And we can choose to show love no matter what is happening in our lifetime, and we can choose to help end human suffering. I think that is like a beautiful way to show love. But I don't understand why things are allowed and why things are not allowed. I'm not God, but I can say that I'm going to show up and be as loving as I possibly can, be as trained as I possibly can, and bring as much resources as we possibly can. So, we have a team out in Texas, even as we speak, who are helping after those floods that happened July 4th, where over 135 people got killed in a matter of hours, and 38 are children, at Camp Mystic and around that vicinity. And we just offered, we've sent the offer out to all the families to pay for grief counseling for them, specifically grief counseling around child loss. Like, how do you ever learn to find joy again after the loss of a child, when it's so unnatural for a parent to experience that, especially something as traumatizing and fast as that? So I've cried a lot. I cry about every single one of these disasters, every single one of these trafficking cases. I've allowed my heart to stay not hardened, because it is love that fuels this whole thing. But I can't tell you why it's allowed to happen. I can tell you that there is a quote that really drives this organization, though. And it's, evil will rise when good men and women do nothing. And so, Richard, we have chosen to raise our hand and to do something.
Oh, that's great. In your conversations again in prayer, did you ever get any inkling of why, there's such, these things go on?
Oh, I can't tell you why evil is allowed to exist in the first place. I'm on my own journey of constantly asking that question, and I can't tell you an answer except for that love exists. And I believe evil is everything not, essentially the opposite of love. And the more we can expand love through our actions and through our life, the better place this whole place will be. And the world is becoming a better place, even though I shared a horrible stat about how sex trafficking is growing. I do believe overall the world is getting to be a better place. We're just learning about evil easier through media and communications being unlike they ever have been before. But I think there's good people out there and people like you willing to talk about hard things that will ignite a flame, hopefully, in some listener that chooses then to raise their hand and realize their power in life to make the world a better place.
What happens when you encounter evil at these places? Disasters happen. The bad guys are already moving in and trying to steal people and do all kinds of stuff. Have you got into, conflicts with, bad actors? Violence? Was that?
We get in conflicts all the time. But that's what's so nice about having this, special forces teams as my crew of operators. We're kind of built-in security. But no, we don't kill them. A lot of people ask us, like, do you kill these people? And the answer is no, as much as it would be the right thing to do, it seems like. But we do not take justice into our own hands. Every country that we operate in, we have signed agreements with federal law enforcement giving us the right to be there. We don't ever come in and try to be law enforcement ourselves. And so the best way to help is to educate, is to empower them in their judicial process and to help them understand exactly how to combat and solve these trafficking issues in their countries. A lot of places, they don't even know what to do. They want to do something. And because we're a global organization, we have those best practices in our pocket, and we can easily start coaching, mentoring, training, and bolstering the efforts of these countries that we work in. And the bar is low, I'd say, because this wasn't even something talked about 20 years ago. We were laughing about pimps and hoes and thought it was cool. Like, how stupid is that? My God. But it's something that I'm grateful people are getting more educated in, because the more educated the good side will be, the more aware of these tactics, the more preventable they will be from groomers and people that are just taking advantage of these economic desperation situations.
Right. How is it different for the economic devastation? Let's say because of a hurricane versus sex trafficking. I guess the two come together. You're saying, as there's a a weather devastation, then all the bad guys kind of come out of the woodwork and make it worse.
That does happen. It's not every disaster. It happens less in America, I've seen, but in things like the Ukraine war, for example. Think about this. Only women and children are allowed to leave. You really think that there aren't traffickers waiting on the other side of that border where they are saying, here, I'll give you housing, I'll give you a free job. So there's a lot of traffickers took advantage of that situation. Women and children, no adult men allowed to leave unless they're over 60. And so it was like the traffickers that our undercover operators were talking to at the time said, it's harvest season. Like, that's how they viewed that disaster.
That's terrible.
It is terrible. So a lot of people get, we meet people every day that have come from other countries looking for better job opportunities to work in a restaurant or work wherever. And they even go from, let's say, Venezuela to Colombia, and they're looking for better opportunities to escape wherever they're coming from. And as soon as they get there, people steal their passports. They say that they owe them money, and the only way to ever see your family again is to do these sex acts. And by the way, listen to this clever one. We'll give you a life insurance policy as part of your job with us. So give us the name and address of all the people you want as beneficiaries. So now you've given them the contact info and addresses of your most loved ones, and they've got that. And they use that against these people. So the porn industry drives it, and the dehumanization of any living person is always going to drive bad things happening. And so if people can wake up and realize that even if people seem like they're enjoying themselves, they're probably acting because their loved ones or their life is on the line. We find out about people being chopped up and put in barrels of acid all the time. And there's people that just are very violent and very willing to hurt people on a moment's notice. And so don't be a proponent and somebody that's continuing this horrible cycle. Realize those are real victims and put an end to the economic driver for why this is happening in the first place.
Right. What's I don't know, what kind of facts can you say about the people involved in evil? Are they just, if you saw them, they just look like regular people? Are they people in bad circumstances that get sucked into it and do it to make money? Or what do you think motivates these people to do these terrible things?
Well, let's define which people we're talking about. The people raping them or the people selling?
Yeah, the people selling them, raping them. Yeah, all the horrible casty characters involved.
They're not always the same. So the people raping them, you you probably wouldn't be able to tell art on the street. There are everything from just regular rapists to child rapists, and they look just like your friends and your neighbors and people in schools. You can't necessarily tell the dark things that they're into. And a lot of times these people had these things happen to them as kids, and that's not an excuse. But what I've learned is I didn't know how important it was to take the time to heal and to really dig into the crap that has happened to you in your life, whatever that is, because your trauma will manifest and hurt people if you don't deal with it. You're either going to end up engaging in something or either have anger outbursts or substance abuse issues. Like, it's gonna manifest. So take the time to deal with that stuff, because I would say 90+% of the people that are in this horrible evil have had it happen to them. And you would think that they would want to be somebody that doesn't ever let it happen to anybody else. But when they don't take the time to heal, many times they become a person that continues to cycle. I'm in no way bad behavior, in no way excusing it. It's letting you know statistics. So it just really depends. Like, there's people that are raping kids. There's people that got into it because they were watching porn and it got younger and younger and weirder, and then they had to have the real thing. That's a very, very typical cycle of they're called a John, the people who are engaging in this stuff. And a lot of times the people selling it, it's financial. I would say most of the time the people selling it is financial, and they just found a way to dehumanize a certain people group or someone that's not them.
Have you met any of these people and tried to help them, or is it just are they irredeemable from the start? Have there been any stories like that where, again, you didn't know, you got to know them, you learned this, you're horrified, and somehow you helped them change? Or is it bad is bad, non-bad is non-bad, or they never crossed the line back and forth?
No, I think we all have things we've done that we regret. It's not my personal calling to work with the guys that are engaging in this and the girls that are engaging in this. It's been my personal calling to help get them off the streets so they can stop hurting people. And I'm working with the victims and survivors of the people that have harmed them. That has been where I've directed my energy. That being said, we pray for all God's children, and we do pray that they find the light, and we pray that they can get out of that horrible lifestyle and get past what they're engaging in. But that's not my personal calling to deal with them. Hopefully they can figure it out in prison. Not my deal.
What have you observed happens to them? Do they just retreat and go find other people to bother, or is there ever justice that you've seen, or what have you observed?
In our cases that we're part of, they go to jail and they stay in jail. Obviously, depending on what were they producing child rape videos? Were they using it? Were they selling it? Depending on what the case is, depends on how long they get in prison. But most of the time, they're not gonna, with those kind of convictions, you are not gonna make it very long in a Honduran jail. And if it's in a mirror, then they go to the Honduran jail and then they go to the American jail. If they get out of that one, they go from one to the other. So the justice part is super important to make sure the case is solid and to make sure you really do have a prosecutor and judges that care instead of just let people off, because they will do it again. They absolutely will do it again.
Once these people get into prison, I guess, the other prisoners don't take too kindly to it, and they mete out the justice.
Yeah, they can take things into their own hands. But, it's every country is different, and I don't stay involved with them. We make sure that they do get prosecuted and that is followed up with. But I don't keep tabs on the trafficker themselves. Try not to get killed that way.
Right, you guys are. What have you seen about media coverage of various events like this? Adequate, inadequate? Seems to be all at once and then nothing. I mean, what have you observed?
So right now, we would love to do this work in our own backyard. It's actually much harder to do this in the U.S. and the UK, especially because overseas, one of the big open doors is they ask for undercover operators. And the reason they are looking for undercover operators that are Americans is because Americans are traveling there to rape these kids. And that's really horrifying. For us, and embarrassing that people from our country are doing that. But that's why they ask us in the first place. Is they're not going to believe Jose is there at a tourist destination asking for kids. They're going to believe Greg and Tom are, that's their frequent buyer pool. So we get offered things as our undercover operators get offered things that they can't get the documentation around themselves. And so, again, we'd like to be doing more here, but that's just where the open doors are. So in those countries that I'm trying to remember your question, the countries that we operate in, they've been doing a very good job with the media so far, and the people don't like it happening, and they do want to do something about it. And we're very, very proud to promote our local law enforcement partners that care enough to put the resources needed to stop this in their countries. I mean, some of these places, they do like 90 location raids in one night. Like, they had hundreds of cops involved to do these giant raids that I've never seen take place anywhere else. So it's really impressive, and they're saying this isn't happening in our country. So learn your lesson.
Well, you said there'll be Americans that'll go do this stuff, which is terrible. Do Americans represent most of the people that engage in this, or are there plenty of people in other countries that do it as well?
Every country is different. So your Asian countries are going to have more Europeans doing it. But in Latin America, it's mostly Americans.
So it's not people necessarily from those countries. They may be the traffickers, but the actual perpetrators of the violence, sexual violence and the regular violence, those tend to be travelers, you're saying, from more predominantly America.
I'd say in the tourist areas, that is correct. But they're in a lot of these countries. I mean, even in America, it happens obviously a lot, but a lot of sexual abuse is happening within the home. And so it's more normalized, depending on the country, to sexually abuse children within the home or within the family, some uncle or whatever. And so in the countries that sexual abuse is socially accepted, because the man is the breadwinner, and so you can't say anything against it, they don't have a massive problem with making money off of it because it's happening anyway. And that's really where one of the big root problems is in the culture, is you got to value these children. You have to understand the damage that happens with sexual abuse. It is something people can heal from. It's very, very, very hard. And it's a long road, and it's a lifelong road. And so you can't just forget these kids they carry that trauma in their body. And again, many times become suicidal, substance abuse, and or offenders themselves. And so in the societies that's normal and not okay, but you can't really do anything or say anything about it, they're offending their own. So I don't think it's just the Americans, but when it comes to the purchase and sale, it would be a traveler, because those are the people actually spending money on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, hey. And you said how much is this industry now?
The stats I saw yesterday, which was World Trafficking Day, was $236 billion. And that's that's outside the home. That's the purchase and sale.
How many people do you think are trafficked each year? Do they have stats on that?
Current stats are 50 million.
Holy cow.
It's a lot. And that's why the thing is, like, it's the biggest thing that people aren't willing to talk about. It's insane to me.
What about the movie that came out, I believe it was a year ago, The Sound of Freedom? Was that a separate group, or, what were your, I don't know if you can give thoughts on it or not?
It's a very accurate movie. And I feel so bad that they got so attacked, but that's just how evil works, is like trying to put a good movie out there. It was pretty tasteful too. My goodness. It was so tame, so tasteful, very well done. And it really opened people's eyes and hearts and minds to try to do something about it, which I love, because that's what happened for me. It was a media piece that I saw that woke me up to this great evil. So my prayer is that people would see that and be activated into wanting to stop this versus just putting their head in the ground.
Yeah. So how can people, first become aware and then find ways to help? Should they listen to your podcast? What's the best entry place for people that want to help?
I think this podcast just crushed it. They learned a lot in this episode, I'm sure. So thank you so much again for being willing to talk about hard things and wake people up to these evils that they can and hopefully will do something about, just by being aware of it. There's so many ways you can learn. We would love to have you get involved. You can go to our website, which is arielrecovery.org, AERIAL, recovery.org. There's a way that you can sign up to donate, fund missions. You can fund a whole country of missions. You can serve with us. This is a $236 billion fight that there isn't even $1 billion organized enough to fight it with. So we are focused on building what we call the force for good. And a force for good is people that are just willing to use their life, their resources, their time, their energy to helping end suffering globally in the way that they specifically feel called to. So we don't have enough resources to fight this ourselves. So we welcome people to this fight.
Just last question. So there's donations, I guess, and then there's actual action. Like how much is a commitment for someone to take action? And if they want to do something physically, like what could that look like?
Yeah, great question. So our real cost, we broke it down. We did all the math and analytics, and it costs about $2,500 for us to rescue a kid. So that money really goes a long way. And we, like, I don't take a salary. Like, we do everything we can to get that money to the front line of need. That's what happens when you've met kids that are trafficked. Like, you find a way to stretch money as far as you possibly can. And so that's really what it costs if people are looking like, how can I help you save another kid? That's the number. If you're looking to serve with us, there is a sign up section on there. We do have different training. It is super invite only because you never know who's trying to get into your trainings. But if you have resources you want to offer, if you have networks, if you have access into countries, if you have training you think would be valuable, please, we've got a section for all three of those. We've got a donate, a serve with us, and join our strategic alliance, which is people that are like, hey, do you ever need to be flown out of an emergency undercover rescue operation? And we're like, yes, all the time. Our operators' lives are on the line. They're like, please use my jet. Like, there's been people that have stuff they want to offer the use of, and that ends up being a really cool way to help depending on the mission.
Yeah, okay. That's great. So what, one place they can go, if you just restate the URL, you wouldn't mind once more?
At aerialrecovery.org.
Okay, very good. Well, Britnie, thank you so much for what you do and for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Richard.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.